So I guess we're finally doing this. It's been years. I mean, I think it was 2008 when we first started building E92 M3s. You know, we held a lot of the records. We've probably built the fastest V10s and V8s out there. Back then, you know, 900 horsepower was a big deal. 1,000 wheel almost on an M6 was a big deal. And we were the ones to do it. We ended up meeting a lot of great people and built a lot of awesome cars. And one of the cars that we actually built was Paul Walker's famous E92 M3 Time Attack race car. So we're gonna get into a little bit about my history with Paul, the history of the car. So we've actually sold the car to a very, very nice gentleman who owns a couple of other cars that were previously Paul's cars. He wanted to do this project with us. He wanted to put the car back together, revamp it so he could get it and be able to take it to all these shows, Cars and Coffees, let people sit in it, enjoy it, see it out and about instead of it sitting in a parking lot, which it's been doing since freaking 2010 or something. I don't even remember how long it's been. So we recently had somebody reach out to us and was extremely interested in the car. He actually reached out to us a few years ago, and I was really busy and I wasn't really at the point where I wanted to actually start a project like this and get the car up and going. And I hadn't decided what I really wanted to do with the car yet. You know, it had been sitting for years in the parking lot. I didn't know if I wanted to build it myself, keep it, but I knew that if I was to build that car, I was never gonna drive it. I wasn't really gonna be having the time to be able to go out to these shows and let people see it and sit in it and do this and do that. It would just probably just sit at the shop. So I thought, you know, after years of this thing sitting and this gentleman reaching out to me, you know, wanting to build this thing, I'm like, you know, he has two of Paul's other cars. He's a great guy and he wanted to go full steam ahead and, you know, rebuild this whole project and spend the money on, you know, redoing everything on the car, all new parts, and, you know, the vision that me and Paul had and the rest of the team at AE and everybody when we were actually gonna rebuild this car. I decided, you know, it's just better to move on, give him the car, and this is a way to put the car back on the street for everybody to enjoy. We're gonna start this project. We'll have the car here next week. The first thing we'll do is take the car to the body shop and get a lot of the stuff fixed. We're dealing and talking with a lot of sponsors that want to be a part of this project. If we haven't talked to you yet and you would like to be a part of this project, we would love to work with everybody. This car has a special place for everybody in this industry, obviously, especially the people who do a lot of E92 M3, E9X M3 stuff. So let's rewind a bit and let me tell you guys a little bit about the story of how I met Paul. So a lot of people think that I met Paul through the car, which is not the case actually. When I was growing up, I was younger, I was, you know, doing Gintani. I was also helping my dad once in a while travel to St. Martin, St. Thomas, and all the islands, going and seeing some customers for our jewelry business, obviously. So I was on a trip to St. Martin with my dad. So we go to St. Martin with my dad, we do our business transactions, whatever. We leave St. Martin and we get on the plane and we're sitting first class. My dad's sitting in front of me and I was sitting right behind him. And so weird that that happened. You know, you would think we would sit next to each other, but no, I ended up sitting behind him. He was sitting in front of me. So we go from St. Martin to Miami. We land in Miami, connecting flight, obviously going to LA. So I'm sitting there and obviously looking at car magazines and just checking out stuff. And we're waiting for everybody to board onto the plane from Miami so we could, you know, leave to LA. So I'm sitting there looking at a magazine and people are loading up into the plane, and all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, holy it's Paul Walker. I'm like, oh my God. I'm telling my dad, you know, Paul's waiting in line to like get in. I could see him standing there. I'm telling my dad, I'm like, dude, it's Paul Walker. I'm all excited, you know what I mean? Back then, Fast and the Furious, crazy, you know, everybody's into it. My dad's like, oh, okay, you know, he hardly even knows who Paul Walker is, but Paul starts moving and I'm sitting maybe like 5 rows down, you know what I mean? And I'm looking, I'm like, dude, where's this guy gonna sit? Next thing you know, he sits right next to me. So I'm like, holy. So he sits down next to me, and I'm obviously like, oh my God, it's Paul, and I'm not trying to make it all like obvious, like I'm some groupie or something. So I'm like looking at him, he sits down, he's like, hey, what's up, kid? How's everything? And I'm like, man, I'm good. My name is Alex. Nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan. I watch, all the Fast and Furious stuff and this and that. I know you love cars. You're into cars. And I'm like, what the funny thing is? I know you used to live down on Ventura Boulevard. I don't know if you'll ever remember, but there was some crazy kid in a Storo blue E36 M3 that one night chased you down and was racing with you on Ventura Boulevard, and you made a ride onto the street next to the Land Rover dealer and went up to your house, I guess, back then. And he goes, oh my God, that's crazy. I'll never forget that car. He's like, yeah, I remember you. You're a crazy, psychotic kid. He wouldn't stop. I was like trying to chase him down. He was in his R34 Skyline. So I had seen the Skyline, and then I looked inside and it was Paul, and I'm like, holy shit. So I was chasing him down. So I was looking at magazines and stuff, and he had brought like a bunch of booklets from like HKS and a bunch of stuff that he was looking at for his Skyline. So he sits next to me, and the whole flight back, man, we're like just talking cars. And I'm literally showing him like, you should buy this part, you should buy that part, you should do this, you should do that. And he's like, dude, how do you know so much about cars? Like what the f-? So, and I'm like, that's what I do. I work at a small shop. I'm starting my own performance shop. I'm trying to get into it, this and that. So we shoot a bunch of parts for his car. He actually gives me two. I showed you guys, I think, in the documentary that we did. This picture was signed by Paul and given to me by Paul when he was shooting Fast and the Furious in Miami. He actually sat by me the whole way back on the plane to LA. He signs one for me. Back then, my girlfriend, which was my wife now, he signs one for her, gives me two of those, and then obviously throughout the flight talks to my dad. We talk about jewelry, watches, so on. He gets my dad's phone number. We end up getting to LA. He calls my dad. My dad sells him some jewelry, gets him some watches and stuff like that. And maybe 5 years goes down the line. And I haven't really heard from Paul, and my dad hasn't heard from Paul really. And I think in 2009, my buddy Roger Rodas, which was actually the person who was driving the car when Paul and him passed away, he called me, and Roger has a really special place in my heart. I met Roger working at RMS. I was a little kid. He used to have a supercharged E36 M3, and he would always want me to work on it so I could learn. He was like a big supporter of mine. So I used to always work on Roger's cars. When I left RMS and started my own thing in the shop in Canoga Park, Roger was the only person that helped me. So Roger used to buy all these cars. I'm sure you guys have seen the YouTube video of Paul Walker's collection where they walk through, the shop and they show you all the cars. I could say 80% of those cars are actually Roger's cars. Roger used to buy all these crazy cars. R8s, M5s, M3s, Porsches, whatever you could think of. And every time he would buy a car, he would call me, tell me he bought a new car. He would let me take the car. He would let me develop an exhaust system on it. He would let me do tuning for it, and just so I could have product to sell for my business. So he would do everything he can to help me. Even my engagement photo session pictures were all done with the R8 twin turbo that I built for Roger. All my engagement photos are in a twin turbo Gen 1 R8 that I built for Roger, which he let me take to Willow Springs, and we did our whole photo shoot at Willow Springs, which is pretty cool. Roger was an unbelievable guy, probably the sweetest guy in the world, and I owe a lot to him for being able to be where I am today, because he helped me through a very dark time. One day I'm sitting in the office in the Van Nuys shop, the one on Bessemer, and my phone rings, and it's Roger. And I pick up, and I'm like, yo, what's up? What's going on? What'd you buy now? And he's like, I didn't buy anything. It's not for me, not right now. I will buy stuff, and you will play with it. I got a lot more cars coming. I'm like, all right, so what's going on? He goes, I need you to do me a favor, and you're not gonna charge for it. And I'm like, what the, man, what do you mean I'm not gonna charge for it? I'm like, all right, what is it? He goes, we have an E92 M3. It's gonna be racing time attack. I need you to put one of your supercharger kits on there. And I'm like, what the? All right. He goes, listen, I promise you, it'll be worth it. Just do it, and I promise you it'll be worth it. And I'm like, obviously, Roger's asking me for this. He's been doing so much for me for years. I'm like, all right, send the car. So they send the car, white E92 M3 rolls up, we get it in, start taking it apart, put our supercharger kit on it, install everything. I get the car on the dyno, we dyno tune the car, make sure everything's good. And then Roger calls me and tells me we're gonna be at Willow Springs at Big Willow. I think it was Friday. We rented the track to do some practice stuff. Come out there, bring out the car. So I'm like, all right, cool. Before I go out there, he tells me, by the way, you built this car for Paul Walker. And I'm like, what? Like, are you kidding me, dude? And I'm like, man, do you even know my story with Paul? To Roger, and he goes, no. I'm like, dude, I met Paul this, and all that years ago. And he's like, all right, I'm not gonna tell him who's building his car. I'm like, all right, cool, don't tell him anything. So he's like, just come to the track, bring the car. I'm like, okay. So we get a trailer, we put the car on the trailer, we drive out to the track, we get to Willow, and they're chilling in their big RV, hanging out, you know, watching TV and stuff. So I go to start unloading the car, and I'm unloading the car, and all of a sudden I see Paul. He walks out of the RV and he starts walking towards me. And as he's walking towards me, I turn on, I'm like, yo, what's up, man? And he's like, get the out of here. Like, no way, man. He goes, how is this even possible? After this many years, you're the one who built my car? And I'm like, yeah, and he comes over and gives me the biggest hug, and he's like, man, how small is this world? How crazy is this that we were talking about this on the plane however many years ago, and you were telling me how you wanted to build BMWs, you wanted to do this, and you wanted to do that, and all of a sudden you're the guy who put the supercharger kit on my car. So it was an unbelievable moment, obviously. It was a great moment for me. From then on, we started racing the car in time attack. Obviously, the guys, Richie and all the other guys from AE were basically going everywhere with the car and taking it to the track. And my buddy, good friend Jeff Westfall, who actually races for a lot of big companies now, he raced for Scuderia Corsa and so on, was the one who was training Paul how to drive these cars on the track, which, I mean, Jeff was a freaking animal. He was the time attack record holder for all this stuff. He's still a monster. And hopefully, Jeff, I know you're gonna be watching this 100%. So when this car is done, we got to take it out and break the record at one of the tracks. So whichever record we set with the street tires on the Hankook tires, you got to go out there and break it just for, you know, some giggles. And for Paul, we need to go out there and, you know, destroy that time. We started racing this car. It was great. Paul loved it.
Hey, what's up, Paul Walker? Out here at the Redline Time Attack. This is stop 4 for the series, and it's been a lot of fun. This is only the second race that I've actually competed in, but it's a fun venue, and it's becoming increasingly more competitive. The exhaust sounds really good. Made a vast improvement from yesterday. I shaved like 3-4 seconds, so definitely going in the right direction.
We, I think, raced this thing for like almost like close to 2 years or something like that, year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And then we had a final race at California Speedway, and that was when we set the street tire record on that track with that car back then. I still have a picture of that with, you know, all the time that it ran and everything. That day when the car got pulled off the track, it rolled out and came next to me, and I looked at the guys and I'm like, shut it off right now. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, dude, you don't hear that? Like, it's ticking like crazy. We're about to have a rod come out the side of the block. We got to stop this thing. So that thing was on stock rod bearings. This is when the whole rod bearing situation was going on, and nobody would listen to me, and we never had, you know, upgraded rod bearings back then, and nothing was made yet. So we automatically instantly shut the car off, put it in the trailer. The car got towed to my shop. So we get the car to my shop, and then we do that YouTube video that we showed you guys a clip of me explaining the problems with the oiling system and the bearings and stuff on the E92. Take the whole motor apart, get ready to start building this thing. Paul buys a E90 M3 because he loves it so much for a daily. He calls me, he's like, let's twin turbo the E90 M3. So I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. Well, I mean, let me get started on the race car, and then, you know, I don't want to have too much on my plate. Let me finish that, and then we'll do the E90 M3. Sadly, obviously, they got into a messed up, tragic accident, and as we were getting ready to build the car and get ready to go for the next time attack season, we lost Roger and Paul.
There it is. Walker was a passenger in a Porsche that collided with a pole.
A Porsche Carrera GT, and so difficult to handle, even professional drivers called it scary.
The star of the Fast and Furious movies was a passenger in the red Porsche, which burst into flames when it crashed. He and the driver were pronounced dead at the scene.
It was a really, really sad time because they were both amazing people. I mean, honestly, both of them. I mean, if you met Roger, it was very hard to find somebody like Roger. And if you met Paul, as famous as Paul was, if you talked to Paul, you would never even know Paul was famous. He was just such a humble, genuine, kind person, and they both were. And it really sucked for all of us that, knew them, were friends with them. It was a very sad and hurtful time for us. And, as that happened, we basically got stuck on the car and we put it on the back burner because we couldn't work on it anymore. There was no point of building it. The passion, the fire inside of us had died. And we just, I could hardly look at the car. Every day I went into work, it was just sad and just reminded me of my friends that we had lost. And we put the car aside and tried to wait till the family figured things out. And the guys at AE figured out what they wanted to do. We had spent a lot of money on the car. We had ordered a lot of parts for the car, and we hadn't been paid for it yet. So the car was completely apart. So once they settled all their stuff that they needed to settle, which took forever, obviously, with what had happened, I kept trying to reach out to Paul's dad, Paul's brother, for years. Nobody would answer me. So the car would literally just sit there. I kept trying to contact them, and at times it got really frustrating because I just felt like, obviously they were going through a lot, but we had to figure out what was gonna happen with this thing. It was just sitting at the shop, like rotting away. So constant phone calls and trying to reach out until finally, I think 3 years after, his dad finally got back to me and basically said, I don't care what you do with that thing. I don't want it. I'm not gonna pay the bill to finish the car. Put a lien on it and deal with it. So I was like, what the? At this point, this car's been sitting here rotting for 3 years in pieces. We've had all this money out in parts for this thing, and then now you want to tell me to put a lien on it. So I'm like, all right, that's what I'm gonna do. So we put a lien on the car. Obviously the lien went through because nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. Me and the guys at AE and Jeff Westfall, we all talked multiple times on trying to maybe put this thing back together and take it out back to Time Attack, have Jeff drive it in memory of Paul and Roger, and just do something good with the car, like give back, try to bring it back. And whatever we tried, it just never happened. Now we're gonna bring this thing back, put a smile back on our faces. It's gonna help us remember all our memories with our friends that we had. I think it is gonna bring some joy to all of us. Me, all the guys at AE, all of Paul's and Roger's really good friends. I'm sure everybody's excited to see this car back up and running again, because it was a fun time in our lives, and it was a great time in our lives, and why not bring it back so we could cherish these memories together. So here's episode 1, guys, and starting the next few weeks and into the couple months, we're gonna rebuild this thing and get it back out there, and we'll have a nice little viewing party at the new shop for everybody to come check it out, see it, and hopefully we could get, maybe some of the family to join, a lot of the friends, all the guys from AE, everybody who was involved in the car back then, and we could all come together and just celebrate what we've accomplished with a very nice gentleman who's actually helping us rebuild this dream and putting it back on the street. So I hope you guys are looking forward to this. Thank you, and can't wait to get this done.